Hello, welcome back to our intermediate macroeconomics again. Now we are moving on to a new topic called an equilibrium business cycle model. So we are going to talk about business cycle. For this chapter, the course targets are we are going to understand what are the input markets. And then we are talking about the equilibrium prices for those inputs and also quantities actually. And then we are going to use our model to explain certain business cycle stylized fact. But for this part, we are going to state the fact that we learn from data first. For this chapter, you have to read textbook chapters 6 and 7. First, we start from input markets. We are thinking about two input market. One is capital rental market for capital. The other is labor market. For capital rental market, we know that for each period household owns a certain fixed amount of machines. Then what he can do is to supply this machine to the capital rental market. And also the household will have some kind of a labor supply quantity he can supply to the labor market. And given the rental price for capital R and the wage rate W that he sees on the market, then the firms, if want to hire these supply, then the firm has to pay cash. For capital rental, the firm has to pay out totally R times K dollar for household in order to rent his machines for one period. And for labor, the firm has to pay W times the labor amount L, that amount of money to the household in order to hire the household to work for the factory, the firm, for one period. And now we are going to look at those two input markets separately. We start from capital rental market. For capital rental market, actually, whenever a household see the rental price for capital R, what he really cares is about how many consumption basket he can buy from using the R dollars. And we know that each basket will cost him P dollars. Therefore, when he see the rental price R, in his mind he know that he can buy R divided by P units of consumption baskets. So that's the benefit he can get for basket consumption if he can rent out 1 unit of machine. Therefore, if we draw a graph like this, the horizontal line is capital, unit of capital, and the vertical line is the real rental price, R divided by P. Then normally you will see that if the real rental price is higher, then the household would be willing to supply more units of machine to the market for firms to rent. And however, this kind of positive slope capital supply may not reflect the situation our model really describes. In our model, we know that at the beginning of each period, the household owns a fixed unit of machine. Here we use number K. So he only has K units of machine. Though whenever he see a higher rental price, he might be interested in increase his machine holding by buying more machine, which is machine investment delta K. But remember, those delta K unit of machine is a capital accumulation process. So that part of extra machine the household buy will not be able to be supplied to the market today. It will only add up to the current capital stock and to be supplied only for tomorrow. So actually, this delta K, though he can decide how many more machines to buy today, he cannot supply that to today's rental. It's for tomorrow because we know that any kind of capital build-up process takes time. Therefore, our model basically assumes that today's capital supply quantity is fixed. So an accurate capital supply curve in our model would be a vertical line. So this would be the KS line that you see on the slide. Now we move on to capital rental demand. We have to imagine that there is an entrepreneur, a boss. He owns a factory, and given that he already hired a certain unit of labor, so you can see I have an icon of labor there. So which means that when we talk about the following story, the unit of labor he hired is fixed. He knows that if he rent no machines, then there will be no output he can produce. Here output, I use the basket to represent the output that he can produce for the market for household to buy. So what he would do is to think his rental decision in a marginal way. So he will continue to ask the following question: what if I rent one more unit of K? What can I get out of it? So he was think about, okay, based on his production technology, he know that if he has one unit of machine for his factory, he will know that combined with labor, he will be able to produce 11 baskets for sale. Therefore, for this extra unit of capital rental hiring from the firm side, he know that he will get benefit of producing an output of 11 units. Therefore, his maximum willingness to pay for hiring this machine would be paying the price equivalent to 11 baskets, because he knows that by having this extra unit of a machine, he can gain the benefit of 11 baskets. Therefore, this will be his maximum willingness to pay for the first unit of capital rental. Therefore, we are able to trace the first point on the graph, which represents the willingness to pay of the boss for renting the first unit of machine. However, this kind of marginal thinking can be continued to the next unit. Now he knows that hiring one unit of machine will be able to produce 11 units of baskets. He will continue to ask the same question again, thinking about what if I continue to rent one more unit of K. Based on his production technology, he will know that when he increases his capital unit hiring from 1 to 2, he will know his total output level can increase from 11 to some number, say 19 here. Therefore, for this extra unit of machine rental, it can give the firm an extra 8 units of output. Therefore, the rental price he's going to pay in terms of output unit, the maximum unit he's willing to pay for hiring this second machine would be equivalent to 8 baskets of consumption goods. Therefore, we are able to trace the second point for the firm's willingness to pay for the second unit of machines. That will be 8 baskets. But remember, any price below 11 is definitely a good deal to hire the first unit. Therefore, the price that he is willing to pay to hire 2 machines is actually 8. Actually, that will be the maximum price. So when the price is 8, he will not only hire the second unit, of course, he will still hire the first unit. And this kind of marginal input hiring decision will be continued nonstop. The boss will continue to ask the same question again. Then based on the production technology, he knows that owning 3 machines or hiring 3 machines to produce, he knows that he's going to produce 24 units of output. So this extra unit of capital, the third unit of capital he hired, actually bring him additional 5 units of goods. Therefore, because the firm definitely does not want to lose money. Therefore, in terms of the real rental price, his maximum willingness to pay for the third unit of machine should not be larger than the output 5 units. So 5 units of output is the firm's maximum willingness to pay to hire the third unit of machine. Therefore, we are able to track the third point for the machine demand under the real rental price of 5 units of basket. We can continue this kind of marginal thinking nonstop, then we are able to trace the capital demand curve from the firm side. Together with capital supply, then we are able to determine the equilibrium quantity of a machine that the firm is going to hire from the household, which we use K star unit. And the intersect will also determine what would be the real rental price for each unit of machine hiring. And also notice that for capital demand curve, when we derive that, each point on the curve is actually the marginal change of output delta Y divided by the marginal change of capital delta K. Our delta K is 1 unit in our previous story. And this ratio, this marginal change ratio, actually we call it marginal productivity of capital, which is denoted as MPK. Now we move on to labor market. In labor market, whenever a household see the nominal wage rate, what he thinks is the same as when he saw the rental price for capital. He will try to think about how many baskets he can buy. Then the number of baskets that he can buy will be simply dividing the wage rate by the price level. So based on the amount of basket he can buy, he will decide how many working hours he would be willing to supply. So in general, when the real wage rate is higher, then the household will be willing to work for longer hours, or here you can think it as supply more people to work. Therefore, in general, a labor supply curve is a positive slope curve. And for the firm side, what firm is thinking about how many labor to hire is using the same marginal thinking. And so on this slide, you see that the factory has a fixed amount of machine that already being hired. So that's why I draw the machine on the lower left corner of the factory, and then fix the capital unit. Then the boss will start to think about labor hiring in a marginal sense. Starting from no labor, no output, the owner can think about the question about hiring 1 additional unit of labor. So based on the production function, he knows that with 1 unit of labor, he can produce 10 units of basket. Therefore, the benefits that this first unit of labor can bring to the factory is to give the owner 10 more units of output. Therefore, the maximum unit of a basket he's willing to pay for real wage will be equal to 10 for this first unit of labor. Then he can move on to the second unit of labor. So if he keeps thinking about hiring 1 more unit of labor, then he will be facing using 2 labor to produce. Then the production function will give him that he is going to be able to produce 18 units of basket. Therefore, this additional unit of labor give him additional 8 unit of output. Therefore, his maximum willing to pay for the second unit of labor should not be more than 8 unit of basket. It will be any number equal to 8 or below that. So we get the second point for the employment of labor for the second unit of labor. And then to continue the marginal thinking for the third unit of labor, then he is thinking about 3 units of labor productions, which can produce 24 units of basket. Therefore, this additional unit of labor create a benefit of additional 6 units of output. Therefore, for the third unit of labor, the maximum basket that he's willing to pay as real wage would be equal to 6. And we continue this marginal thinking nonstop, then we are able to get a negative slope labor demand curve for the market. To locate the equilibrium labor market's condition, then we will get the intersect that gave us the equilibrium amount of labor hiring L star and the equilibrium wage rate W over P star. And you can notice that labor demand curve that we get is actually the additional unit of output you can get out of additional unit of labor. That's why we put down it's equal to delta Y over delta L. This is called marginal productivity of labor. The last part we want to talk about is business cycle stylized fact. So these are facts that we want to explain, use our economic theory. So to think about the stylized fact about business cycle, we focus on the output activity. Normally, if you have plot a GDP, usually it's real GDP per capita for a country, then we can get a trend line like this one. This one will take natural log. And then given this GDP data, we can find that actually there seems to be a trend for this time series to go a long time. So the trend line, we can estimate it, it would be like this red line. So if we zoom into this figure to the time after 2000, what we can see is the trend line and the original data line, blue line. So sometimes the real data is above trend, sometimes the real GDP data is below trend. So we try to deduct trend from the real GDP blue line. Then what's left, those residual part, is called the cyclical component of GDP. So you can see that after we do the deduction, the time before 2001, this blue line is above the red line. Therefore, the original line, the cyclical part, is positive. And between year 2001 all the way to 2004, red line is above the blue one. So the deduction will give us a negative cyclical component value. And after 2004 is positive, and then go negative again after 2008. So therefore, you can see that any real data value, we can always decompose into two components. One is the red component. It is called growth component. And we usually try to explain it to understand why certain economic data, we have such kind of a trend pattern. Normally, it is attributed to things like institution, geography, culture, etc. And then we have other theories try to focus on the orange business cycle cyclical component. And the cyclical component, the reason behind the fluctuation of this component go up and down, above zero and below zero, usually is related to a lot of temporary things that change and shift the economy, such as energy shocks, political swings, financial bubbles, etc. So now, once we extract the cyclical component of GDP, we usually will apply the same method to all other macro variables, and to extract the cyclical component of all other variables. Suppose you apply this thing to variable x and got the blue line to be the cyclical component of variable x. And you can see that in this graph, the cyclical component of x kind of move together with the cyclical component of GDP. They move up and down together in the same direction. If you observe certain variables, the cyclical component can move with the cyclical component of GDP in the same way, then we say that this x variable is procyclical. On the other hand, sometimes you have a variable z and you try to extract its cyclical component, and then you find out that its movement seems to be against the movement of the cyclical component of GDP, which means that like this purple line, whenever z go up, then the orange line, the GDP will go down. So the cyclical component of two series, they are not in the same direction. So when a variable go against the direction of GDP, then we say that this variable fluctuation is counter-cyclical. Okay. So a variable is procyclical, a counter-cyclical is always depend on its cyclical component pattern and its relationship with the cyclical component of GDP. This is the figure of the cyclical component of United States real GDP from 1947 to 2006. and it's go up and down. And usually when it is extremely low, below zero and extremely low, it usually means something bad happened, or recession or war. And then you can see we can apply the same decomposition to different time series value. First, we focus on the consumption variable, and we extract its cyclical component. On this graph, the red line is the cyclical component of GDP, and the blue line is the cyclical component of consumption expenditure. You can see that consumption is moving in the same direction as GDP. So we will say that consumption is procyclical. This is one fact that we find from data. Later, we will show that our theory can actually describe it very well. And then the other component we care about is investment. So on this graph, we have the cyclical component of investment in blue line. You can see that it's moved up and down with GDP in the same direction as well. Therefore, the stylized fact of investment is that it is procyclical. Then we move on to labor market. For labor market, we find that the real wage rate, it's the cyclical component, also the blue line, actually move up and down with GDP in the same direction as well. Therefore, the stylized fact for real wage rate is also procyclical. Then the equilibrium employment in labor market, we also find that employment move up and down with GDP in the same direction as well. Therefore, the stylized fact for employment is that it is also procyclical. Then we move on to the capital rental market. Then we can see that the cyclical component of real rental price also move with GDP cyclical component in the same direction as well. Therefore, real rental price is procyclical. And then we come back to consumption and investment again. If we put these two graphs together, remember the fluctuation of red line always reflects the fluctuation of the cyclical component of real GDP. And however, when we put this red line with investment, you can see that the red line seems to be not so fluctuating. That is because that investment is extremely volatile, much more volatile than GDP. And when we put consumption data on the right side with GDP, you can see that they seem to co-move in the same magnitude, which means that consumption actually, its fluctuation is like a GDP, not as crazy as investment. Therefore, we come to our sixth stylized fact of business cycle, which is that consumption is smooth and investment is volatile during business cycles. These are the 6 stylized facts that we are going to see if our model can explain them well.